Saturday mornings are supposed to be peaceful on my street. The kind of morning where you sip your coffee and listen to sprinklers ticking away somewhere in the distance, except mine started with the electric snap and a woman's shriek so sharp I thought someone was being murdered. I stepped out onto my porch, half-dressed, coffee steaming in my hand, and there she was, Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed queen, sitting sideways on her golf cart like she'd just been struck by lightning. Smoke curled from the cheap wire cutters in her fist. Actually tried to snip the new perimeter wire I just installed to power my automated gate, thinking, I guess, that rules and property lines only applied to everyone else. It wasn't a lethal wire, just a low-voltage livestock deterrent to keep the neighborhood dogs and raccoons from digging under the fence, but when you mix electricity, metal, and a woman with a god complex, physics makes its point. I should have been worried, or at least polite, maybe rush down and help her up, but honestly, I just stood there, watching her flail and sputter like a lawn ornament gone rogue, because this wasn't a one-time thing. This was the fourth time she'd trespassed onto my property this month, and this time karma had an extension cord. It all kicked off about 6 weeks back, right after I tore out my battered old wooden fence and put in a sleek, dark metal one that looked like something from a home design magazine. My land butts up against a narrow strip of HOA-maintained green, belchus grass and some dying trees nobody uses except dog walkers. I paid for everything, filed the permits, got the city sign-off, played by the book. But Karen, in her infinite wisdom, decided my fence ruined the neighborhood's aesthetic unity. Her exact words, and unleashed the HOA equivalent of holy war. First, it was notes, handwritten and dripping with passive aggression, tucked under my doormat. Your gate reflects poorly on community values. Consider a warmer material to harmonize with adjacent structures. She even taped a paint sample card in my mailbox, once desert taupe elegance, but when I didn't budge, she went full inspector mode. One morning I caught her in my backyard, tape measure in hand, inspecting. When I told her she was trespassing, she goes, "As HOA president, I have oversight authority," which was laughable because the vice president had already quit after she fined him for leaving his trash cans out 3 hours too long, and everybody else just avoided her. So I started documenting videos, screenshots, everything. You'd think someone so obsessed with rules would at least follow a few herself. Then came the deterrent wire. It's not even visible from the street, just a single line running along the inside of the fence, hooked to a solar unit. Totally legal. But Karen saw it as some sort of military-grade intimidation. She stormed up to my door one night, HOA guidelines highlighted in yellow, yelling, "Unauthorized electrical installations are strictly prohibited." I told her, calmly as I could, "This is inside my property line, Karen. The HOA doesn't regulate internal fencing." She blinked, as if the concept was new. "It sent a message," she insisted. "Good," I said. "That's the point." After that, she started cruising by at weird hours, taking pictures, not waving back when I waved. I knew she'd try something, just didn't think it'd be so literal. So when she finally fried herself on the fence that Saturday morning, I just watched. She stumbled around, clutching her wrist, screeching, "You electrified the fence. You could have killed me." "It's low voltage," I said. "Same as a cattle fence. You're fine." She called me a menace, swore she'd call the police. "Please do," I said. "Make sure to mention the 3 posted warning signs you ignored." Her eyes darted to the yellow caution signs I'd gotten at Home Depot. "Those aren't legal," she barked. "They're as legal as mulch, Karen." She stormed off, but not before hissing, "This isn't over." And you know what? She was right. That afternoon, every resident got an email blast from her urgent community alert. Dangerous electric installation, complete with zoomed-in photos of my fence that made it look like Jurassic Park. Neighbors started calling. Some laughed. Mrs. Bennett next door asked if she could borrow my setup for her raccoon problem. But some sided with Karen. "Do you really think it's safe?" She says it's high voltage. I told them she also thinks the moon landing was filmed in a basement. But rumors spread faster than truth, and Karen wielded gossip like a weapon. So I decided to fight her where she least expected, in the rules. I dug out the HOA charter, and there was plain as Dano unauthorized interference with private fences or structures. Her wire cutting was a violation. Next morning, I printed the security camera photos. Her on my lawn, cutters in hand. Filed an official complaint, carbon copied the whole neighborhood. The next board meeting was a circus cheap coffee, folding chairs, neighbors whispering, Karen pacing behind the table like she's prepping for trial. She launched into a speech about public safety, threat to harmony, even had blown-up photos with red arrows like she was unveiling a crime. When Phil, the one guy on the board who wasn't afraid of her, "Let me speak, I just laid out the evidence." Karen entered my property, used wire cutters, ignored warning signs. Here's the video. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Even Mrs. Dalton, a retired teacher, piped up, "Karen, dear, you wrote these bylaws." Karen's face turned scarlet, but she didn't back down. By the next morning, she formed a safety committee membership. 1. She sent more emails, accused me of harassment, even filed a fake incident report claiming her golf cart got damaged by illegal voltage. I was exhausted just reading it. Then she started in with the city. I called the same inspector who'd approved my installation. He said I wasn't the first to call about her. He took my documentation, and within 48 hours, a compliance officer warned her about filing false reports. That only made her angrier. I came home to shock jock spray painted on my mailbox. Nobody else in the neighborhood had the time or pettiness for that. I shrugged, cleaned it off, and put up another camera. That weekend, Karen started doing slow patrols, snapping pictures of my hedges, my driveway, my trash cans. She shouted once from her cart, "Enjoy your little electric toy, while you and the HOA will have the last word." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I left my gate slightly open during the day to see if she'd bite. Sure enough, she crept up and touched the fence again. No scream this time. Just a sharp yelp and a hasty retreat. I figured maybe she'd finally give up. But Karen didn't know how to quit. Monday morning, 2 city officers in animal control, led by Karen, showed up, pointed at my fence, talking like she was directing a crime scene. The code guy checked my setup, said low voltage, legal, properly, signed no issue here. Karen's face fell, but when she started to argue, he warned her about harassment. For once, she had no comeback. You'd think that would end it, but a few nights later, while the neighborhood slept, she came back with tools. The night was calm, almost peaceful, but then I heard a metallic clink pulled up the security feed, and there she was crouched by my solar unit, golf cart idling behind her. I hit record, then crept out, catching her mid-tamper. "Careful," I called. "That's the live wire." She yelped, stumbled back. "I'm conducting an emergency safety inspection," she said, like midnight property invasions were just another HOA duty. I called the sheriff, and when the deputy arrived, he took one look at the footage and shook his head. "She's getting charged, finally." Karen barely looked at me as they led her away. Just stared, like maybe this was all some nightmare she'd wake up from. Next morning, the neighborhood buzzed texts, emails, people coming by to ask what happened. Some call me a hero, others a troublemaker. Even the mailman grinned. "Heard you finally got her." Phil, now interim HOA chair, called an emergency vote to remove her. Board voted her out that night. It should have felt like victory, but I knew better. People like Karen don't accept defeat, they flip the board. Days passed, mostly calm. Then at dawn, I woke to heavy machinery outside Karen in dark sunglasses, flanked by contractors with bolt cutters, claiming the HOA voted to remove my fence. Before they could touch anything, the sheriff pulled up. "Ma'am, you're under a restraining order. Step away." The contractors left fast. Karen was left by the curb, trembling, vowing, "You haven't seen the last of me." She switched tactics, anonymous complaints, fake code notices taped to my mailbox, even petty sabotage. I set a trap, installed a decoy conduit with a motion alarm. Sure enough, one night, Karen snipped it and set off the siren, fell face first into my flower bed. I just watched her, hair full of mulch. "You think you're clever, but you're just a bully," she spat. "Then move," I said, and she stormed off. That night, she filed a formal complaint against me. The board laughed it off. I sent every photo, timestamp, and video clip to Phil. He called, barely suppressing laughter. "You're a legend now. We're voting to archive your footage." I felt a little safer until the next morning a backhoe parked in front of my fence, Karen ordering the crew to dig up my property line. Phil showed up with legal documents. The contractors bailed. Karen left standing in the dust. That night, she was permanently removed from the HOA. For a moment, it was over. But then she went further. One night, the security feed caught Karen with 2 hired men breaking into my property, trying to rip out my gate. The feed went dark then. I heard a scream. The men fled, leaving Karen standing frozen as blue lights flashed. Deputy Collins charged her with conspiracy and criminal mischief. For the first time, real fear flashed in her eyes. When she left in the cruiser, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The aftermath was weird. The neighborhood gossiped like crazy. Some people were furious, others relieved. Karen's lawyer showed up, offering a financial settlement for damages if I dropped the charges. I told him I'd settle for peace, nothing else. Then Karen tried to spin the story online, posting as Concerned Resident 123, calling me a vigilante. I countered with the actual police reports and video stills. The online support dried up fast. Then, like a bad movie, she filed a formal appeal with the HOA, 26 pages of rambling accusations, photos of my warning signs labeled threat symbols. Phil called a special session just to reject it. Karen showed up in pearls and a pink sweater, playing the victim. The board dismissed her permanently, and for a while it seemed like things might finally go back to normal. But it was never really over. Someone, her cousin, turns out started circling my property at night, recording videos, keeping the tension alive. I installed backup security, alarms, cellular cameras, every layer of protection money could buy. Twice, Karen tried again, sneaking onto my land in the middle of the night, fiddling with my meter box. The alarms caught her every time. Eventually, Collins cuffed her right on the sidewalk. She barely struggled. After that, there was peace. The board disbanded the HOA entirely. Phil handed me a thank you card. Mrs. Bennett brought muffins. The lake was quiet again. Karen put her house up for sale, moved away in the dead of night, no drama, just an ending. But as I watched the moving truck pull away, I realized people like her never really vanish. They find a new neighborhood, a new board, a new set of rules to twist. Still, as I stood at the fence that started it all, listening to the low hum of the wire in the sunrise, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. And that, after everything, was all I'd ever wanted. So let's hear, do you think I went too far? Or was standing my ground the only way? Have you ever faced a neighbor or an HOA that pushed you to your limits? Drop your story below, because I can promise you this out here, peace doesn't come free, and sometimes it takes a little current to remind folks where the line is drawn.